Hey everybody, it's Party Elite here with another Tomb Kings video, diving into the entire Tomb King roster, minus the lords that were covered in the previous video, which you can watch by following the link under the eye at the top right corner of the screen. There's a ton to get through, so let's not waste any time. First up, the heroes, of which there are three types. The Necrotect is cheap at 803 points and comes in with somewhat acceptable melee stats as far as a hero is concerned, and a 20 bonus versus infantry. On a skeleton chariot, the Necrotect gets a fair bit more health and armor, alongside a serious buff to speed and charge bonus, with reductions in melee stats and weapon strength. The bonus versus infantry, however, creeps up to 28. Missile resistance of 15%, coupled with a weakness to fire of 25%, makes this your typical mummy, and apart from that, we see standard undead traits such as causes fear, undead, crumbling, and disintegration. The Necrotect's true calling, however, is expressed in the unique abilities. Wrath of the Creator is an area augment passive ability that assists all nearby constructs within a 30-meter radius with a +5 to armor piercing damage and a +5 to melee attack as well. Stone Shaper is a 30-meter area augment, also a passive, giving +10 armor and +10% missile resistance to constructs within the area, while Restore is an active ability that can be used twice per battle on constructs within 100 meters of the Necrotect, replenishing their hit points. There are also two items available, the Vambraces of the Sun, which reduces enemy flame resistance and melee attack, both by a fair bit, as long as they're within 40 meters of the Necrotect, and the Elixir of Might, which is a one-use item that gives 50% weapon damage and +26 melee attack for 36 seconds to a targeted ally. So, the Necrotect is a support hero that won't do terribly in combat if push comes to shove. And, with a construct-heavy army, you might want to keep a Necrotect nearby to keep those constructs in fighting form. The Tomb Prince is next up as a halberd hero with a base cost of 1186, anti-large and armor piercing with silver shields, and again, acceptable stats across the board as far as melee is concerned. A split of 260 armor piercing damage and a 25 bonus versus large isn't terrible for use when protecting units or lords from enemy monsters or cavalry. On a skeletal steed, health, speed, and charge bonus get minor boosts, though the shields drop to bronze, while a skeleton chariot ensures increased health, armor, speed, and charge bonus at the cost of melee stats, weapon strength, and armor piercing capabilities. Anti-large is also swapped out for a 28-point bonus versus infantry. Typical mummy stats with 15% missile resistance and 25% weakness to fire, with all the things that come with the undead. As far as abilities go, Guardian is a nice inclusion here. We already saw this trait with the update to the first game last year, but this gives a 22% physical resistance to nearby lord or hero units, and that is perhaps the best use of the Tomb Prince. If you're wondering if that can stack with Arhan's Libra Mortis and the lore of Nehara's Incantation of Protection, it can. So apart from that, we've got the Curse of Jaff, which can only be used when health is below 50%. It can be used once, and it lasts for 22 seconds, reducing enemy melee attack by 26 within a range of 40 meters of the cast, while also getting them to rampage. Finally, we see Tomb Strike, which simply increases melee attack and weapon damage, while also giving the Tomb Prince the ability to cause terror. Two unique items are available for use as well. The Cloak of Dunes allows the Tomb Prince to stalk and be unspottable, which is giving a huge buff to stealthiness. Enemy units won't be able to spot the Tomb Prince until he's basically upon them. And then there's the Blade of Settep, which is a hex that lasts 44 seconds and reduces enemy armor by 30 and physical resistance by 22%. Next up, Lich Priests. They come in three varieties, Death, Light, and Nehara, costing 1292, 1295, and 1302 points respectively. Apart from differences in magical capabilities, they have the same stats, which is to say, they're all clearly geared towards casting and avoiding melee conflict, and they all have access to skeletal steeds that buff health and speed, and charge bonus, all of which you'll likely use to keep these guys out of trouble and alive. Apart from the respective lore attributes, the Curse of Hasar is an ability that can be used as long as health is below 50%, and it allows you to target an area of 40 meters once during a battle, and inflict it with 60 points of armor reduction. That is absolutely massive, and it only lasts for 25 seconds, but it can change the tone of a battle. Unfortunately, it means putting your priest in a risky situation to get their health down to the right point, but sometimes an overcast spell or two can get you there right away. The priests also have access to two items, Nefera's Scrolls of Mighty Incantations, which is probably the longest item name in the game. It gives an increase to power reserves and power recharge rates, but the strength of the ability is higher when there are more units within a 40-meter radius of the caster. Then there is Enhil's Canopy, or Canopy, not sure how to pronounce that, but it gives all units within an area of 40 meters a plus 66% magic resistance. It can only be used once every 120 seconds, and it lasts only for 24 seconds, but that can work really nicely with a powerful spell to keep your own troops alive. If it's not obvious what I'm hinting at, consider Banishment, the Purple Sun, or the Skullstorm. All vortex spells that you can't fully control, but if you pair them with the use of this item, you'll take less damage than you otherwise may have. Onwards to the units. As we go through them, I just want to mention some common traits you'll be seeing throughout the army. They all cause fear, things crumble and disintegrate, and they are either undead or constructs, both of which are mechanically the same. Finally, you're going to see these three icons very often, and that just lets you know that this unit is affected by Realm of Souls regeneration. Important to note that undead units for the followers of Nagash and constructs across the board do not get the benefits of Realm of Souls. Neither do monsters, beasts, artillery, or lords and heroes. First up, the Skeleton Warriors. Right off the bat, you can see the stats here are atrociously low, even for a unit that costs 325 points. They are in some ways outclassed even by lowly men-at-arms from Bretonnia, but at least the Skeleton Warriors have the numbers advantage. Jokes aside, they have silver shields and can act as meat shields, or bone shields, I guess. The Skeleton Spearmen, at a 350 point cost, are the first step to being a particularly mediocre at absolutely anything type of unit. The melee defense of 30 means they can hold a line, if nothing else, and with silver shields, charge defense against large and anti-large capabilities, they'll hold that line for long enough for your heavy hitters to move in with side and rear charges. The Nehara Warriors at 575 points are the first unit with a melee attack stat higher than their melee defense stat. With a little help from some friends, such as a nearby lord giving melee attack and defense buffs through Unyielding Will or My Will Be Done, or through magical assistance in combat, these guys will be able to hold a line and even overcome some low to mid tier enemy infantry as long as they're low on armor. Expect them to take a beating while doing it though. Next up, King Nehesh's Scorpion Legion are a skeleton spearman regiment of renown. Compared to the regular version, they cost 600 points and come with much more armor, with slight buffs to leadership, melee attack, and defense stats, and a +1 to charge bonus. They also bring poison damage to the field alongside expert charge defense rather than just charge defense against large. The Tomb Guard come in at 750 points, and they have some decent stats all around. Silver shields to go with their armor, and once again, higher melee defense than attack, but overall, a capable fighting unit. A few buffs here and there, or debuffs on the other side of the field, can really make these guys shine. The Tomb Guards with halberds come in at 850 points, are the first armor-piercing unit the roster boasts, with 20 points of armor-piercing damage and 19 points of bonus versus large. These are no Phoenix Guard or Black Guard quality troops, but think closer to Empire Halberdiers, or just better than Stormvermin with halberds and Bretonnian polearms. They'll serve well against typical cavalry units. The Hepra Guard, last of the melee infantry units, is a Tomb Guard regiment of renown that comes in at a cost of 1050, has better leadership, melee attack, weapon strength, and charge bonus stats at the cost of some melee defense and their silver shields. They also bring magical damage in melee alongside the ability to regenerate, which might be their biggest strength. Skeleton Archers seem statistically weak with a range of just 140 and missile damage of just 16 for every 10 seconds, but with the right magic and the right targets, they will still do a fair bit of damage, and of course they'll provide the same amount of damage to morale, and they can still help turn an engagement from a distance. They're cheap at 475 points, but at least they'll help you counter airborne units or reduce enemy morale where necessary. The Blessed Legion of Fakuth has a name that will get many YouTube channels demonetized. As a Skeleton Archer Regiment of Renown unit, they cost 725 points and come in with better range, better armor, better leadership, and better melee stats as well. They also cause armor sundering with their ranged attacks, reducing armor by 30 points for 10 seconds at a time. And that can be invaluable against the right type of enemy, particularly the type that comes in heavily armored. Skeleton Horsemen are the first of the cavalry units, and they come in for a small cost of 400 points, bringing with them bronze shields, vanguard deployment, decent speed, and mediocre stats across the board, which is fair for the price point. I personally like to use this tier of cavalry to stress opponents out or keep them constantly threatened. They can charge into ranged units or force an opponent to be ready for a charge into said ranged units, and they can be used to take out artillery if it's left behind. Low tier as they may be, I can see these guys having uses. The Nehara Horsemen at 650 points have significantly better stats, closer to an actual cavalry unit another army might field. Shielded and fast, they can be used for hit-and-run tactics, distraction, and to stop ranged fire with some more efficiency than Skeleton Horsemen. The Skeleton Chariot comes in at 900 points and is the pinnacle of chariot performance. That isn't true at all. In fact, the stats are middling at best on the lower end of chariots, but they come in units of 12 chariots in ultra sizes, and that alone makes a huge difference in just how much they can disrupt a line, break an enemy formation, or mow down multiple units in one charge. They definitely have their place on the battlefield, and I'm glad to see that. Skeleton Horsemen Archers come in at 500 points, have the same range as regular Skeleton Archers, but can Vanguard deploy, can fire while moving, and are, of course, on horseback, giving them higher speeds to kite the enemy with. At just 25 more points, they come in with half as many individuals as a Skeleton Archer unit, but cause more missile damage and can last a little bit better in melee should they get caught up in it. Or, they can at least escape. Skeleton Archer Chariots, meanwhile, come in at a cost of 1,000, are in groups of 12 like regular Tomb King Chariots in ultra size. They've got some serious missile damage capabilities, and in melee, they are capable anti-infantry units with some serious formation disrupting capabilities as well. The Carrion is an extremely swift airborne unit with Vanguard deployment. Coming in for 350 points, it acts similar to Fellbats except for the fact that it can cause some actual damage with a relatively high weapon strength. They have some lasting power as well, with a melee defense of 46, and that can help pin a unit in place while some constructs are closing the gap. Whether it's shutting down a flanking maneuver or closing down archers and artillery, these can be a great utility unit. Next up, the Ushabti. As the most basic construct available to the Tomb Kings, these guys cost a mere 900 points to field a unit, bringing high armor and a solid weapon strength, though it's coupled with meddling melee stats otherwise. 52 points of armor-piercing damage and 5 points of bonus versus infantry can certainly help, but they could use some magical assistance or help from a Necrotect to get some work done. The Ushabti with Great Bow are 1100 apiece. Coming in with melee and ranged capabilities, they have great armor and again, middling stats in melee, though their range is an excellent 255, and their missile damage is quite excellent, with about half of it armor-piercing. 47 points of armor-piercing in melee is also solid, and as with the melee Ushabti, they could use some help in the form of magic or Necrotect support to really shine. Sepulchral Stalkers slither into the field for 1200 points, and here we have another hybrid unit capable in melee and from range. Causing armor-piercing damage from range and in melee, they also cause magical and poison damage from a distance, and have 21 points of bonus versus large, making them quite formidable in the right circumstances. Again, a somewhat low melee attack makes them look a little weak at first glance, but some support in that front along with the 25% missile resistance and heavy hitting capabilities can make quite a difference on the field, and their added Vanguard deployment is quite helpful for plotting ambushes as well. Chosen of the Gods are an Ushabti with Great Bow Regiment of Renown. Coming in for 1250 points, they bring slightly higher leadership and melee stats with a reduction in missile damage, though their ammunition has the Shield Breaker trait, which reduces enemy missile parry from shields by 24 points. I haven't experimented with them enough to find the ideal situation for these guys over the regular Ushabti with Great Bow, as the reduction of shield parry capabilities is very specific and potentially too narrow for use outside of the campaign. Time will tell. Necropolis Knights come in for 1300 points, and with bronze shields, decent armor, solid melee stats, poison, and armor-piercing damage, they are quite a capable unit. They can make for great ambushes, and with a speed of 66, can do well as the pincers that push in from the sides of an engagement as well. The poison support can work wonders in helping weaker mainline troops in a fight too. The Eyes of the Desert, a Sepulchral Stalker Regiment of Renown, comes in at 1350 points. Higher leadership, better melee stats, and significantly improved missile damage make these guys seem quite worthwhile. Add to that the ability to stalk, and now you've got an anti-large unit that can wait in the wings, use poison to slow an enemy escape down, and then chase and slaughter enemy cavalry with decent anti-large armor-piercing stats. And last of the basic constructs, Necropolis Knights with Halberds coming in at 1400 points. No shields on the Halberd variant, and lower melee and charge stats across the board, but the 28 bonus versus large surpasses Royal Pegasus Knights and Royal Altdorf Griffites, though granted there are fewer knights in a unit of Necropolis Knights with Halberds, a pretty solid unit nonetheless, if not a little pricey. First among the rare constructs, the Tomb Scorpion, coming in at 1000 points, is a terror-inducing, vanguard-deploying, armor-piercing, anti-infantry single-entity unit. Heavily armored, and with 272 points of armor piercing and 10 points of bonus versus infantry, the Tomb Scorpion can really devastate an enemy infantry unit as long as it isn't hit by a capable anti-large counter. It has middling melee defense at best, but a fairly solid melee attack stat and excellent damage-dealing capabilities. A little bit of Necrotect assistance or help with magic can go a long way here. Also, as a side note, while the Tomb Scorpion can't burrow on command, it does have an attack animation that lets it easily get behind enemy lines. Then again, it can opt to just crash through a unit instead as well. The Hemrian War Sphinx comes in at 1800 points and is quite the beast. Once more we see terror, and we also see the addition of the Siege Attacker trait here. The Hemrian War Sphinx has a very high armor stat, decent speed, and a great deal of damage dealing capabilities with decent melee stats. 340 points of armor-piercing damage and 15 points of bonus versus infantry are no joke, and a melee defense of 42 is great as well. In addition to all that is the range of 140, the excessive amount of ammunition being carried, and the relatively low but helpful amount of missile damage. The Hyro Titan is up next at 2000 points. Laser Eyes can cause fear and terror, and can use Spirit Leech and Shem's Burning Gaze as bound abilities. Lots of armor coupled with great melee stats, magic and fire damage, and 413 points of armor-piercing damage make this quite a large problem for the enemy, pun entirely intended, and the only real downside is the low speed. In fact, this might be the slowest large unit in the game, but I guess you have to sacrifice speed for lasers shooting from your eyes. The Necrosphinx is next, coming in at 2000 points as well, bringing a great set of stats here alongside excellent speeds, 400 points of armor-piercing damage, a 35 bonus versus large, and a solid charge bonus to boot. Once more bringing fear and terror, the Necrosphinx can bounce from unit to unit, causing a great deal of pain, and can help shut down enemy cavalry maneuvers, with some help needed to close the gaps of course. The Sphinx of Usech is a Necrosphinx Regiment of Renown, coming in at 2350 points. More health alongside higher leadership and melee stats are coupled with magical and fire damage and 25% fire resistance. Not a terrible bargain if you expect physical resistance or regeneration on the other side of the field, just hope that there's a lot of it, otherwise there's plenty of points being wasted here. The Screaming Skull Catapult is the first of two artillery units at 800 points, bringing magical armor-piercing damage alongside a new leadership-reducing trait called Take Cover that causes a -8 to leadership for 10 seconds. A range of 380 is pretty solid, though it obviously can't compete with the superior range of a Bretonnian Trebuchet, but it will do the job if you want to force the enemy to come to you. The Casket of Souls is the other artillery piece with a price tag of 1300 points. This is a heavy-hitting piece of equipment that launches 7 projectiles with every shot and can do a lot of damage when the enemy is clumped up. Stacking magic that can increase missile damage on top of the unit can bring over 1000 points of missile damage per 10 seconds, and a regular shot has 90 points of armor-piercing damage and 56 points of explosive armor-piercing damage. Add to that the magical damage and the Covenant of Power unit ability that increases your power reserves, and you're looking at quite a unique and powerful piece of artillery. Keep in mind though, it's excessively inaccurate, so you're probably going to face some friendly fire if lines close. And that's the entire Tomb King roster. It's quite comprehensive, with a great variety of units. It'll be interesting to see how the meta develops. There are plenty of units with terrible melee stats, but the cheap fodder of the Tomb King armies can hold the line as the constructs wheel around and bash in through the backs, sides, and hell, why not even the fronts of the enemies? There is a huge range in stats, costs, and abilities here, and that'll be hopefully encouraging a variety of approaches. There are also, of course, the Hex Wraiths, Fellbats, Crypt Ghouls, and Direwolves available to the followers of Nagash, but that's just an added layer from the Vampire Counts, and those stats are all the same if I recall correctly. As always, thank you very much for watching, and remember to subscribe for more early access content from Total War, as well as a constant flow of campaigns, battles, and tactical analysis. There's going to be a ton of Total War to cover this year, and I look forward to every bit of it. Till next time, cheers.